Welcome to this winning, wholesome and wellness Wednesday. This is your favorite current affairs news show, proudly brought to you by Namibia Media Holdings. My name is Aina Raiza and alongside me is Ashwin Mberi.
Always good to have you on Africa. Good morning. Now have a seat and let's take a look at the wetlands and why it is important to have a day in their honor. A wetland can be defined as land that contains marshes or swamps. Have a look.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning and thank you very much for rising with the stars. Amnesty International accuses Israel of apartheid crimes. The humanitarian organization Amnesty International defends in a report released today that the Israel authorities must be held accountable for imposing an apartheid system on the Palestinians and that this must be prosecuted as a crime against humanity. The report states that Israel imposes a system of oppression and domination on Palestinians, both those living in Israel and the occupied Palestinian territories, as well as those who are refugees in other countries. According to Amnesty, a system that in international law amounts to apartheid. Furthermore, the International Humanitarian Organization calls on all states to bring to justice the perpetrators of these crimes. Our report reveals the true extent of Israel's apartheid regime. Whether they live in Gaza, East Jerusalem, Hebron, or even in Israel, Palestinians are treated as a racially inferior group and systematically disenfranchised, says the report. Amnesty International Secretary General Agnes Callamard said that there is no possible justification for a system built around institutionalized racist oppression of millions of people. Apartheid has no place in our world, and states that choose to make a concession to Israel are on the wrong side of history, he stressed.
Now in our second story, WHO warns of COVID medical waste threat. The World Health Organization warned that the tens of thousands of tons of extra medical waste used in tackling the COVID-19 pandemic had put a strain on healthcare waste management systems, according to WHO, who added that extra waste is threatening human and environmental health and exposing a dire need to improve waste management practices. As countries scrambled to get personal protective equipment, less attention was paid to disposing of COVID-19 healthcare waste safely and sustainably. A report looked at the 1.5 billion units, approximately 87,000 tons of PPE procured between March 2020 and November 2021. Most of this equipment has likely ended up as waste. Furthermore, over 140 million test kits have been shipped, with the potential to generate 2,600 tons of mainly plastic, non-infectious waste and 731,000 liters of chemical waste. Approximately 97% of plastic waste from tests is incinerated, the report said.
In our next story, Burkina Faso restores constitution and names coup leader president. Burkina Faso's military government said it had restored the constitution a week after taking power and has appointed the coup leaders as head of state for a transitional period. The move comes shortly after the African Union suspended Burkina Faso for a takeover, and diplomats from West Africa and the United Nations pressed demands for a return to civilian rule. In a statement read on television, the military government announced it had approved a fundamental act that lifts the suspension of the constitution. Under the Fundamental Act, it said the military government has officially named the Patriotic Movement for Preservation and Restoration, ensure the continuity of the state pending the establishment of transitional bodies. It formally identified coup leader Lieutenant Colonel Paul Henry Damimba as president of the MPSR, head of state and supreme leader of the armed forces.
In our next story, blood for sale in the village of Kakonda. The inoperability of 2 blood banks at the municipal hospital of Kakonda in Huila forces the population to buy blood at exorbitant prices defined by the donors to save the lives of relatives hospitalized in the health unit. These are basically patients diagnosed with malaria plus anemia whose treatment includes blood transfusion. Paulino Venancio said that he has 2 children hospitalized with anemia who need a transfusion, but he was advised to look for a donor outside the health unit. Joao Pedro, father of a hospitalized child, said that the hospital has no blood and appealed to the authorities to solve the problem as soon as possible. Now, in turn, the municipal director of health, Clementino Kasekawe, said that the 2 blood banks at the hospital, in addition to having little capacity, have been inoperative for 2 months due to permanent lack of electricity.
Mali has announced an official change of its official language from French to Bambara. Days after Bamako demanded the departure of French Ambassador Joël Meyer, Mali has announced a change to its official language from French to Bambara. It is estimated that about 80% of the population of Mali speaks Bambara as a first or second language. The decision follows the hostile and outrageous comments made by French Minister of Foreign Affairs towards the Malian authorities. The relationship between Mali and France have deteriorated sharply since Assimi Goïta government announced that it wanted to postpone the elections initially scheduled for February 2022. Western powers are concerned about Russia's growing involvement in the former French colony. Now, after the break, we'll be back with more news.
This is Africa Good Morning. Let's continue with your top stories. National Assembly threatens sanctions against MDAs over secret lopsided recruitments. The Senate Committee on Federal Character and Intergovernmental Affairs has threatened the National Assembly will invoke legislative sanctions against ministries, departments or agencies of the federal government found engaging in secret and lopsided recruitments. The committee therefore asked the heads of MDAs to ensure that their recruitment exercises accommodate every qualified Nigerian from the 6 geopolitical zones of the country. The Senate is hereby emphasizing that appointments must be given special considerations to ensure that geopolitical zones are adequately represented in the federal civil service. We will visit all the MDAs this year to audit their staff list. We will take drastic action against any erring agency.
Council of Ministers approves 50% increase in national minimum wage. The executives approved during the first ordinary session of the Council of Ministers, guided by the President of the Republic, Joao Lourenço, a 50% increase in the national minimum wage to face the degradation of purchasing power of workers and the need of maintenance and economic sustainability. Minister of Public Administration, Labor and Social Security, Teresa Diaz, said that the decision resulted from several studies carried out, which allowed for the first time to have a positive differentiation. She added that this exercise with the greatest impact went from the non-technical to technical classes and gradually moved up towards positive differentiation. Teresa Diaz said that she is working with the Ministry of Finance to, in a next phase, find, after all the negotiations, a common denominator for classes that at this stage did not see the problem properly addressed. From this perspective, in the short term, we will have the upper class even for professors with a new scenario, depending on the results we have from the negotiations and also depending on the salary fund available for this purpose, is clarified. Public office holder exempt from adjustment. In turn, the Minister of Finance, Vera Daves, clarified the remuneration of public office holders and politicians was not touched on to leave space in terms of budgetary reserves in order to dedicate the greatest possible amount to lower classes. The idea, therefore, he stressed, is to maximize adjustments among people who earn less, and because they are the ones who suffer the most from the impact of inflation and the difficulties in acquiring the most basic items to satisfy individual needs.
In our next story, 32 kidnapped victims rescued in northwestern Nigeria. Nigerian police said on Monday that 32 people kidnapped by bandits have been freed in different parts of the northwestern state of Zamfara. Mohammed Shehu, the spokesperson for Zamfara police, told reporters in a press briefing in Gusau, the state's capital city, that the police, in collaboration with other security agencies, rescued the victims who were abducted in Niger, Katsina, and Zamfara state respectively. According to him, the victims were rescued between last Wednesday and Sunday. He said the released victims will be medically checked and debriefed before being reunited with their respective families. There have been a series of gunmen attacks in northern Nigeria in recent months, leading to deaths and kidnappings.
Namibian government wants $318 million from Samherji. The Namibian government wants bribery accused Icelandic company Samherji Holding to pay to it $318 million in taxes, which its local subsidiary owned tax authorities before the fish rod corruption scandal broke out in 2019. Samherji's newly published annual account dated 30 December 2021 shows that the government wants Samherji to pay taxes and other legal claims owned by its subsidiaries such as Saha Seafood, Escha Investment, and Hain State Investment. The fishing company, which is accused of being the main vehicle that drove the fish road Saha forward, left the country in 2019 under a cloud after it was accused of paying Namibian executives and politicians bribes in exchange for fishing quotas. Namibian authorities have instituted several tax and legal claims against Namibian subsidiaries of Samherji Holdings. Among those are back taxes of $318 million, a paragraph contained in the annual account of Samherji Holdings states.
All right, in the last of our top stories, Ethiopian Airlines to resume 737 MAX flights after 2019 crash. Ethiopian Airlines is set on Tuesday to operate the Boeing 737 MAX for the first time since a crash nearly 3 years ago killed all 157 people on board and triggered the global grounding of the aircraft. The twin disasters and subsequent scrutiny of the 737 MAX's faulty flight handling system, known as the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, amounted to the worst crisis in Boeing's history. In a statement to AFP, the airline said the decision to resume 737 MAX flights came after intense recertification by regulators in the United States, the European Union, China, and Ethiopia. All right, that brings us to the end of our top stories. Now, the battle between capitalist gain and protecting natural resources is well alive in Namibia. I'll be talking to Frank Stephan after the break about a new proposed mine. Stick around.
Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. Frank Stephan discusses the proposed mine in southern Namibia and what effects it could have on Stamford and surrounding communities, including nearby farms. And here is his discussion.
Thank you for staying with Africa Good Morning. Now, Frank Stephan, the editor of the German daily in Namibia, the Allgemeine Zeitung, recently attended another meeting by members of Namibia's farming community in the Kalahari. This time it was the community of Stamford that deliberated the effects of the proposed Wings uranium project, which will have, the effects it will have on this part of Namibia. Now, he joins me today to have a talk about this. Good morning, Frank. How are you?
Hi. Yes, I'm quite well. And, well personally, but not well when I see what's happening down there.
Yes.
Because this is quite a sad state of affairs. I mean, this is the second meeting of that sort. They had one at Leonardville last year, and at that stage, the meeting was really held between the farmers and the Wings project themselves. In other words, the geologists and the whole team of theirs. And this time they never turned up. What was bad about it, not even the government turned up, but even though they had been invited. And that to me is always a red flag, because this whole thing is a very important item for Namibia. You know, you find that somebody, Dr. Roy Miller, who used to be the chief surveyor of Namibia in the Ministry of Mines and Energy, he actually prepared the presentation. It's not the first one he made. He actually even presented it to the Minister of Agriculture. And so he's given a complete rundown of what will happen, what is going to happen. He's spent a huge amount of his personal time and effort to find out how it works in different parts of the world. He's looked at Australia, he's looked at Kazakhstan, where these guys come from. It's Kazakhstan, but via turn and subsidiaries, it's actually Rosatom, the big nuclear company in Russia. And so he's looked all over the world, and he's even looked at items that went bad in the old DDR, you know, that's the German, the communist part of Germany before they were reunited. And he looked at Königsberg, which is like in mining industry, probably the worst example of in situ leaching. That's the process they call it, because they've taken more than 30 years to rehabilitate that part, and it's literally cost billions.
Wow.
So we're not talking of some small item here. This is serious stuff that they're having. So this was sad to see how the farmers actually are worried about this pilot project that is now envisaged after the initial EIA, that's now the environmental impact assessment, for the exploration was already never true to regulation in Namibia, where you've got to have public hearings, people talking about it and giving their views, especially affected parties. So they were always surprised about the exploration aspect. But now suddenly you already have a pilot project, and this is serious business. We're now going towards, once a pilot project works, the next step to actually become commercial is like just this minor step.
Absolutely. So could you explain the process in layman's terms?
Yeah, it took me a bit of time, so I'm not the expert. Please don't think I'm the expert. But in basic terms, what happens is you've got a centralized borehole that goes right down to the deposit, and you push in a solution of sulfuric acid and other heavy metals, including radium and stuff like that. So that in itself is already partly radioactive, not seriously so, but these heavy metals actually cause it to be extremely toxic. Now you push that with extreme pressure down into into that ore body, I'd say. And then it dilutes that uranium, it takes it up into the solution. And the idea is that you've got a centralized hole, and around it there are a couple of more holes. Okay? And now with you pushing down that water, you now suck it out or pump it out again.
Wow.
And the idea is that you automatically have a flow where the pressure is downwards and upwards, where you pump out more than you actually pump in.
Wow.
The idea is to accumulate water from the surrounds, and in that way make sure that you collect all the uranium, saturated water without any escaping. Now the problem is that in this case, this ore body is center in the Stumpreet artesian well. And it's not only Stumpreet, it's the whole Kalahari basin that is affected by it. And so, and with a lot of irrigation projects going on further to the south, and huge numbers of boreholes pumping off water and whatever you have down there, you suddenly find that the flow going southwards along the Awap, which comes from Stumpreet downwards, and then further to the east, you've got Leonardville, where it comes through on the Nosop Valley. These are old river valleys, I'd say, that are now on top, but that used to be part of the original basin, like in millions of years back. Now, all these aquifers far below ground still carry water, but there's even new water, fresh water, drinking water, high quality drinking water further on the upper levels. Now, all of that, especially on that level, is where the ore body is found. Wow. And now with this huge seepage going towards the south, Dr. Miller reckons it's bound to be that some of that uranium-enriched water literally seeps into the other aquifers. So it doesn't only affect Stumpreet, it will eventually affect the whole Kalahari if we don't watch out.
All right, I'm glad you pointed that out, because on Africa Good Morning, of course, we don't just focus on Namibia, we focus on the whole of Africa. Why do you think this is relevant for Africa?
Well, there are two reasons why it's relevant. And number one, you and I spoke earlier about Recon Africa and how bit by bit and I have to say, it's basically not only the West, it's the whole world has suddenly decided, with oil not being the flavor of the month anymore, why don't we move it out to Africa? Africa seems to be an easy target, and it proves to be an easy target. We've seen the fiasco in Nigeria and all over the world. And suddenly you find that fracking becomes an issue, big time drilling for gas and oil, and all of it is done without proper procedure being followed most of the time, or very often, as we could see in Nigeria, as we could see now in our own case in Recon Africa. Now, if you think fracking is a problem because there's pump after pump after, or drilling point after drilling point, you better watch out for this in situ leaching. It is much more closer from one point to the next. So much so that one drilling point to the next can sometimes only have 21 meters.
Wow.
So this is a huge thing, and once it starts, they've got now 2 ore bodies in the Kalahari, but they're likely to find more as they progress. Now, the same thing can happen anywhere in Africa once again.
Yes.
And there needs to be attention placed on it. And what makes it worse is if you look at the map that we've drawn up here, you can clearly see that water table goes to the right-hand side towards Botswana. In fact, there's another map. This only shows how many claims have been declared in that whole basin. But if you take on the right-hand side, you suddenly find that Botswana is heavily affected by it as well. And that is why it becomes an African issue. Because this already is not a Namibian issue only. It is one that goes far beyond our border, because it even goes down to the Oranje. So it will affect South African waters as well.
Truly worrisome, understandably so. Thank you very much, Frank, for coming on Africa Good Morning and disseminating that information. And as usual, making sure people are just truly informed on the impacts of such movements.
Sure.
All right. This is still Africa Good Morning, keeping you informed. Stick around, more on the show. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning as we continue to give you a broadened view of African news. Now let's zoom in on Zambia, the only way we know how, by having a chat with Mr. Mike Sichula. Mike, how are you?
Africa, good morning. I'm very well, thank you. How are you doing?
We are fantastic. Let's dive straight into it. Environmental campaigners and other interest groups have expressed shock over a government announcement to allow mining activities in the Lower Zambezi National Park. Could you please get into this?
Okay, yes, quite indeed. This topic has been on the Zambian media circles and other stakeholders since 2012. When the PF administration came into office, there was this offer by some foreign investors to say they wanted to explore mining in the Lower Zambezi National Park. So back then, the matter had gone to court because the body that regulates environmental issues had rejected the proposal to create the mine in the national park. But the Minister of Environment back then also overturned that rejection and said mining could go on. So since 2012 to date, this issue has been going on back and forth. Now, with the new administration in place, people were expecting that President Hakainde Hichilema was going to direct that mining should not take place in the Lower Zambezi. But this is not something that is coming up where people are saying, questioning the new government to say, are you really concerned about the environmental issues that are happening in the Lower Zambezi? We can listen to the video of one of the environmental campaigners that are opposed to the setting up of a mine in the Lower Zambezi. Let's listen to this video.
As CEJ, we are hoping, and it is our prayer, that the Minister of Green Economy and Environment was misquoted, because we'll be wondering, why would it be important to have the protected areas which we cannot protect when under threat? Because having such activity in the middle of the national park, the environmental damages may not be reversible. We therefore urge our head of state, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, if possible, to ensure that this decision is reviewed, because it will help us to ensure that we promote better policy decisions.
So there you are. That's one of the civil society organizations in Zambia. That's the topic which government says it is not their decision. The decision was made by the previous administration. Then moving on to my second story, the price of fuel in Zambia has been adjusted downward slightly after the National Energy Regulator hiked the pump price last month. In December, you may be aware that the Energy Regulation Board increased the price of petrol to 21 kwacha, which is about $1.29 per liter, from about 17 kwacha. However, within a short period of time, the Energy Regulation Board has reduced the pump price by less than, in dollar terms, by less than 50 cents. This is something which a number of consumers are saying it's not enough, because the hike was about $1.29, but the reduction is less than 50 cents. So they are not saying it is something that is good. But one interesting aspect with the Zambian situation in terms of fuel is that going forward, ultra fuel has been will no longer be sold in filling stations. The government is opting to settle for low sulfur diesel on the market. This is something that stakeholders are beginning to react to, say, but why are we having this change? Because a number of diesel engines are using ultra sulfur instead of low sulfur. So this is something that is also going on in terms of fuel pricing in Zambia. Then the other feature,
Mike, sorry to interrupt you. Could you please get into your next two stories as briefly as possible? To continue.
Yeah. Then moving on to my third story, I think, is the aspect of the popularity of the United Party will be put to test tomorrow in the parliamentary by-elections. 6 months after the UPND won the elections, There in the picture is President Hakainde Hichilema drumming up support for the candidate in Kawata constituency, which is within Lusaka. So there are about 9 candidates that are contesting this seat. The previous candidate died because he was involved in a road traffic accident right at his face. So tomorrow people are going to see whether the UPND has cemented its popularity in Zambia or the PF are going to get this seat. Then in my last story, the sports story, Wana Janza, Zambia's referee who shocked the football community by ending an AFCON match between Tunisia and Mali twice, has returned to Zambia, and he did give an interview at the airport saying he was hit by a stroke wave and he didn't know that such a condition is present, and he was confused when he was referring that match, such that he ended the match twice in a situation that shocked the football community. He is back in the country, and he said he could have died during that officiating of the match. He didn't know what was going on, and that's how the football community now has listened to his side of the story following that controversial ending of the match twice at AFCON that is going on in Cameroon.
All right. Thank you very much, Mike, for bringing us the news stories from Zambia.
Thank you very much. Africa, good morning.
Africa, good morning indeed. Now, soon we'll be talking to Ari, first of all, about how the South African government secured an 11 billion rand loan from the World Bank. But before that, weather.
Welcome back to Africa. Good morning. The South African government has secured an 11 billion rand loan from the World Bank, a very generous lending rate and a 10-year repaid term. Ari Houhad has this story and more. Good morning, Ari. Please take it away.
Yes, very good morning. It's a lending it's a big amount. It's 11 billion, as you mentioned. It's like us in our personal life. It's sometimes easier to get that loan, but you must pay it back. So that is the challenge that was discussed in the parliament yesterday as well. The minister, financial minister Enoch Godongwana was asked to just explain why it is needed. So the lending rate is 0.8%. That is the minister, and it's a 10 years repayment term, and no payment in the first 3 years. So the discussion in Parliament was if that was necessary. Obviously, since COVID started, there's been 3 big loans that the government committed to. The International Monetary Fund, that was about 65 billion. The New Development Bank loan of 15 billion, and then the African Development Bank also 4.5 billion. So lots of money that was needed by the government. They do have the money now. They need to pay it back somehow as well. So we will see. Hopefully, the economy will be able to do that for the repayments to be done in good time.
Indeed. Now, the South African cabinet announced yesterday to scrap isolation for COVID-19 positives with no symptoms, and schools are to stop the rotational system of schooling. Please get into that.
Yes, Ashwin, there's relief there in the regulations. There's still 3,000 cases per day in South Africa recorded, so it's not that the pandemic has gone away. But the rationale behind the announcement was that the proportion of people with immunity to the virus in South Africa has risen to an excess of 60% to 80%. So it is that herd immunity statement that is related here. But anyway, it is in schools, it's good. They returned to daily attendance. It was a problem for the education system as well, because there was a rotational system in the schools. That wasn't good. So now everybody needs to go to school every day. And then also the no more 1 meter distancing will be applicable for the children at school as well. So that is a good announcement for the school at least, and things can get back to normal, so to speak.
All right, we understand the price of petrol and diesel increases again today. Please tell us more.
Yes, that's not good news for the consumer. I think everybody is kind of looking in their garage if the bicycle can still work. I think it's getting very expensive for everybody to travel in South Africa at the moment. The economy is under pressure. The reality is that it's increasing from today. Petrol increases by 53 cents. Diesel by 80 cents, and then paraffin, that's a very big component in the South African economy, by 100 cents, or by 1 rand. So at the moment, for the first time ever, above 20 rand will be the price for inland, 20 rand and 14 cents for 95 unleaded petrol, diesel 19.42. That's the oil barrel, and that's the reason, according to the officials. They say that the current crude oil price is $90 per barrel. It is aiming for $100 per barrel, so the economists say. But that's even as the biggest reason for the increase in the petrol price, diesel and paraffin. And also the rand stabilized a little bit against the dollar, but that also had an influence as well. But not good news for the consumer in South Africa.
Riding a bicycle has never been more appealing. Now, Cricket South Africa confirmed the dates for current national coach Mark Boucher to attend his disciplinary hearing. Please get into that as briefly as possible, Ari.
Yes, the date has been set for May. It is because South Africa tour New Zealand now. They left today. They're leaving today for New Zealand for a tour, getting back to play Bangladesh and then playing England again in June. But it's important. It's serious accusations made, misconduct accusations made by Cricket South Africa against the current coach Mark Boucher. So those will be heard from the 16th to the 20th of May. And also indications from Mark Boucher is that he indicated that he will call on players to also testify. So it looks like it's a challenge for South African cricket. Hopefully not too much of the dirty laundry will be hanged out in public.
All right, in our feel-good story, after a decade, the city of Durban will host an international golf tournament.
Yes, it's good news for Durban. They've hosted the big tournaments 10 years ago. Durban Country Club has for long been regarded as South Africa's top golf course. And so it will be a good tournament. It's not the Rory McIlroys that will play yet. It is a co-sanctioned by the Sunshine Tour and the European Challenge Tour. But it's a 3.5 million purse that is offered by the sponsors Johnson's Workwear Open. So it will be co-hosted by Mount Edgecombe. So brilliant to see that there's a top international sport event again in Durban, a great venue. And so we'll see the stars of tomorrow that will play in this tournament in Durban. So it's nice to see international golf back in Durban again, where it needs to be.
All right. Thank you very much, Ari, for bringing us the stories from South Africa.
Pleasure. Have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
All right. Now, originally, I thought it was witchcraft, but apparently oil prices are behind the fuel hike. We'll be talking about that in our economic news stories after the break. Now, between South Africa and Namibia, there's a lot of panic. Maybe some people are buying new sneakers, others are getting their bicycles, mostly due to the current fuel hike. Now, AA is saying oil prices are behind the fuel hike. Let's get into economic news stories. The AA has launched a petition calling for a review of all components of the petrol price. Ominous oil price data is the main cause of the fuel hike. This is according to the Automobile Association, commenting on the latest petrol price hikes for February. Mineral Resources and Energy Minister Gwede Mantashe announced that petrol will rise by 53 cents a litre, diesel by 80 cents a litre, and illuminating paraffin by a whopping 1.01 cents rand a litre. The major factor in the latest fuel hike is the rapid strengthening of benchmark crude oil prices to nearly $90 a barrel.
In our next story, Kapchira shut down indefinite. Malawians will continue experiencing intermittent power supply in the days to come as electricity generation company grapples to restore the power at Kapchira power station, which has the capacity to feed about 130 megawatts into national grid. The station was shut down on Monday last week following damages to some of the equipment in the aftermath of Cyclone Anna. Strong winds and heavy rains destroyed property worth of kwacha, including a dike on the Shire River, which Agenco uses to divert power into the Kapchira Dam for energy generation. As of yesterday, it was still unclear when the machine would be restored and how much of the work it would cost. After touring the plant on Monday, Agenco Chief Executive Officer William Liabunya rated the situation as a disaster.
Now we swing over to Botswana as ABSA unveils youth banking bundle. In a move to support younger customers transitioning into adulthood, ABSA Bank of Botswana has introduced a youth-focused value proposition dubbed Youth Banking. The new offering, which targets customers from 0 to 30 years of age, provides access to a suite of solutions to serve their transactional and savings needs, as well as borrowing and protection needs as their financial sophistication grows and reaches different stages of life. The Future Youth Savings Account is made for young people between the ages of 0 to 18. This account allows parents to save for their children's future while they are young.
KWF grants 20 million euros for large-scale electricity storage. KfW, the German development agency, has signed a 20 million euro grant agreement with the state-owned Namibian Power Corporation. The funding will be used for the large-scale electricity storage project in the Erongo region. The state-owned Nam Power now has the financial means to implement its project to build a large-scale electricity storage system in the Erongo region. The electricity storage system will be installed in Oburu, a town in Erongo region. Nampower is expected to contribute 20% of the total cost of the storage project. The state-owned company will focus on connecting the future storage system to Namibia's national power grid in the Umburu substation, as well as paying local fees and taxes not covered by the KfW grant.
All right, those have been our economic news stories. Now, no one likes a sore loser, which is why it's saddening to hear that Nigerian players have been facing all kinds of abuse after their AFCON exit. Stick around for that after Economic Indicators. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning. It's time for us to get into sports news, and unfortunately, we start on the darker, more intolerant side of the sporting world. Online abuse, death threats for Nigeria players after AFCON exit. Nigeria got knocked out of the AFCON in the last 16, and some fans decided to take out their frustration on social media. Nigeria's Africa Cup of Nations elimination in the last 16 at the hands of Tunisia was a deep disappointment for the team's followers. The Super Eagles were not only favorites to win the tie, but also to go all the way to the final. The response to the hate and abuse from inside the Nigeria camp was swift and disapproving. People need to act responsibly and not turn their disappointments into hate speech and threats against some players. Coach Eguavoen told Al Jazeera, these players gave their everything.
In our next story, COVID cases within a controllable range, says a games organizer. The COVID-19 situation at the Beijing Winter Olympics is within an expected controllable range, despite increasing positive cases being detected, a senior official at China's Olympic Pandemic Prevention and Control Office said on Tuesday. The Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics Organizing Committee has reported 200 COVID cases since the 23rd of January among airport arrivals and those in some games, closed loops, bubbles that separate the event personnel, including athletes, from the public. Huang Chun, the deputy director of the committee's Pandemic Prevention and Control Office, said that the rising cases were also a result of more effective and accurate COVID detection techniques by customs.
33 South African players in 2022 IPL auction, including baby AB Brevis. There will be 33 South Africans in the 2022 Indian Premier League auction that will take place on 12 and 13 February in Bengaluru. A total of 519 players will be up for sale at the two-day auction as they look to be picked up by one of the 10 franchises. Now, SA Under-19 star Dewald Brevis, who is nicknamed Baby AB, is also included after he impressed for South Africa at the ongoing Under-19 Cricket World Cup in the Caribbean. He has a reserve price of around 400,000 rand. The 18-year-old batter is the leading run scorer of the tournament.
In our next story, Barcelona is set to sign Aubameyang from Arsenal. Barcelona were reportedly closing in on signing the Premier Aubameyang on Monday night after Arsenal agreed to let their former captain leave for free. Aubameyang will join Barca on initial 6 months contract, according to report in the Spanish press. With option to extend by the further year. The signing did not have to be announced before the transfer window closed on Monday, as Aubameyang is reportedly a free agent. Barca continues to be hampered by enormous debt, which amounts to more than €1 billion.
Yikes. Now, if you look at the last captains, Arsenal lost. It was Henry, it was Fabregas, and they all went on to win without us. So I don't know how I feel about that. This is Still Africa. Good morning. Stick around. Headlines after the break. Thank you for staying with Africa. Good morning from 7 a.m. Let's get straight into today's headlines. Amnesty International accuses Israel of apartheid crime. WHO warns of COVID medical waste threat. Burkina Faso restores constitution, names coup leader president. Blood for sale in the village of Kakonda. Mali announces a change to its official language from French to Bambara. Oil prices behind fuel hike according to AA. Those have been our stories.
Thank you very much for joining us on Africa Good Morning. We do welcome your remarks regarding our show. You can email them to us. Our email is agm_2centsworth@nmh.com.na. Alternatively, we have a website. It's called One Up 2. Please do visit us. And on that note, is all my love, all my light.
Swera Jaganaka.